Artificial intelligence is used across countless industries and has become a part of many people's daily lives. Ashley Julier sat down with Christo Wilson, Needham resident and professor of computer science at Northeastern University, to find out how artificial intelligence works, how it's used, and any potential concerns with the technology.
We hear the term artificial intelligence a lot, but what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, it's a pretty big term. I mean, in general, I think it refers to computer algorithms that learn from data. So rather than a programmer, like a human being, explicitly putting in all the rules for the computer to follow, you instead give it some data and say, just figure the rules out yourself. And when it works, it can actually learn something and then repeat it.
How is that actually possible?
So it's really just fancy statistics. Let's take an example of basketball, right? You have some data about the players and you want to know who will be a good player in the future, right? You might look at like their height or how old they are or how many games they've played and use that to predict who's going to be a good player in the future. That's all artificial intelligence is doing. You're giving it a bunch of data and saying, well, based on kind of correlations and statistics here, figure out how to predict more of these kinds of things in the future.
What are some examples of AI that people might be using every single day that they might not even be aware is AI?
Yeah, so AI is all over the place now. You might choose to use it if you go and use a service like ChatGPT, so one of these chat bots, or one of these new generative AI services that can generate images. You give them a prompt and they'll make a picture for you. But artificial intelligence also gets used in things like search engines, right? When you Google something, they're using artificial intelligence to help find relevant information for you. Or even something like the Facebook newsfeed. What content amongst all the things on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, do they think that you will engage with? And artificial intelligence can help with that. And then artificial intelligence is also now being applied in cases where you might not expect it or even know it's being used. So for example, there's AIs being used in medical contexts to help look at medical records and recommend a treatment. Or if you are asking for a loan, or even if you're applying for a job, there may be an artificial intelligence behind the scenes doing some of the evaluation and determining, should you get that loan? Should you get this apartment? Should you get this job? Should you get this promotion? There's actually a lot of artificial intelligence being applied in those kinds of scenarios.
Is there an ultimate goal when it comes to developing artificial intelligence?
The technologists who build this stuff, I think, will ultimately say they're trying to build general artificial intelligence, the kind of thing you read about in a sci-fi book or a sci-fi movie. The kind of machine that can really just learn and reason and plan on its own, that is fully autonomous. That's the ultimate goal. But people have been saying that goal was 20 years away since the 70s. So are we actually going to achieve that anytime soon? I think that's pretty unlikely. So the nearer term goals, I think, are just more automation. Why have someone doing, basic customer support when you can have a chatbot do it? Or why hire a freelance writer to write marketing copy or a freelance artist to do a sketch for you when an AI can just kind of whip it up instantaneously for free, essentially?
What are some advantages, but what are also some concerns when it comes to AI?
Yeah, the kinds of systems that we're seeing are potentially very powerful. If you're looking to automate certain kinds of work, machines can do automation. That's what they're really good at. It's repeatable, it's very fast, and there's lots of applications where that's good. Machines are also potentially very good at analysis. I often do this in my own research. We have lots and lots of data and we don't quite understand it. Machine learning is good to help us try and understand it. Data that's much, much bigger than any team of people could ever look at. And that's great, but there are also concerns. Especially with these systems that are being applied in cases where you don't really know it's being applied, like let's say being evaluated for a job, or whether your credit worthiness is good enough. These are situations that are high stakes. They're gating access to opportunity, and now you're talking about an opaque machine doing it. Is that machine fair? Is it unbiased? Or does it have a whole bunch of societal biases baked in? And now you have kind of an accountability problem. if a human being was biased, say, in a job evaluation, right, you can hold them to account, and we know how to hold people to account. How do you hold a computer program that's completely opaque, that even its designers may not fully understand, to account for those kinds of problems? So I think that's sort of the key issue, is that these systems can be applied lots of different places, and it's very opaque, and then that creates this lack of accountability that's very hard to overcome. Perhaps more difficult than if there were people there.
Is there a way to mitigate the issue, if not eradicate it completely?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think this largely comes down to regulation. If we live in a world where you can take any data you want and build any kind of system and deploy it in any context with no transparency and no mandated accountability, you can get away with a lot. And there's not a lot of that individual people can do. But if we start looking at, for example, the AI Act, which is making its way through the legislature in Europe, they have a transparency regime. You have to say when this is being used. You have to say how it was trained. There's mandatory audits and reviews before you can release things into the wild. It's a much more robust transparency and accountability regime. And maybe that does get us to a place where you can actually build these kind of amazing things and deploy them safely.